Hello everybody, good evening and welcome to another De Montfort University live stream here with the DMU student advisors. My name's Ben, I'm joined this evening by Nikila and Henrik, and together we are going to explore a little bit to do with sort of why higher education, why choose higher education, and then a little bit later we're going to talk a little bit about how to research university. So if you are at those kind of initial stages of maybe thinking about going to university, you're not sure what it's all about, we're going to touch on some things around sort of university and higher education here, talking about the courses and the academic benefits to that sort of thing. And then, as I say, we're going to talk a little bit more about actually how to research, particularly as we go into the next few months, as universities hopefully start to open up. We're going to touch on things like open days, for instance, and how you can make the most out of the research opportunities over the next few months, so that when you start in year 13 in September, or whether you're thinking about applying in next September for the following year, you've got a really good opportunity here to kind of touch on all these things and use some of the tips that we talk about today to kind of benefit you in terms of making those decisions. So there's a lot that we're going to kind of touch through over the next sort of hour or so. If you do have any questions at all during the session, please do pop those into the comments, and as we go through the session we are going to try and answer those as we go. So if there's anything at all that you want to know about university, we are all graduates, myself and Henrik graduates of DMU, Nikila from somewhere else that we won't mention, and we can obviously talk about from our own experiences about university and what it was like when we were researching university back then a few years ago. I won't mention how many that was. So let's kick this off first of all with the sort of academic side. So we're going to get through the kind of more important things first, and then we'll touch on some more sort of fun stuff a little bit later. So the academic stuff is obviously the big reason why you would go to university. Henrik, do you want to talk us through a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Ben. Yeah, as you said, obviously the academic side of thing will make it's a massive appeal of going to university. And I think one of the main reasons for that is there's just so much choice on offer when you go to university in terms of what you can study. So obviously when you're studying things like your GCSEs, you've got a little small bit of scope as to the subjects you can choose, maybe things like history, geography as your additional GCSEs, and same with your A-levels. You can start to study a few more subjects, things like psychology, languages, business, that kind of thing. But when it comes to actually going to university, there is so much choice there that you can study. I think there's over 50,000 different courses on offer in the UK, and around 200 different institutions. So already you can see there are so many different topics, and they range from all kinds of crazy stuff to normal things. You've got your nursing, your business, your science-based subjects, but then you've got various fashion courses. You can study things like cheese and wine making and watchmaking and all sorts of stuff. So if you've got an interest in a pretty specific topic or subject area, then maybe going to university is something you can consider, and there probably will be a course somewhere at a university on offer where you can study that. If you're somebody that has a career in mind, then going to university might be a really, really great thing to do. Especially if you do want to go into a career that does require a degree. Various healthcare courses. I think even to go into the police now, I think you need a degree. I think that's a recent change. Things like potentially being an engineer, architects, being nurses, that kind of stuff, being a teacher. You probably will need a degree to go into the majority of those careers and professions. So by going to university and studying one of those courses, you're going to have a direct pathway into one of those careers. Nikila will be able to talk about her experiences. She studied a pretty unique course that does lead on to profession, so we'll probably touch on that in a little bit later. But myself, I studied a business course. I wasn't quite too sure what I wanted to do afterwards, but I just knew that I wanted to go to uni and open up loads of pathways and avenues and all that good stuff that comes along with it. Also with university, there's a lot of progression afterwards. So a lot of students can either, they can get into university by doing things like foundation courses. And then maybe once you've done your actual degrees, you can do things like master's courses. We could do your research courses, your PhDs, that kind of thing. So there's loads and loads of progression there, especially if you want to take your career to the really high levels. And it's also worth noting that you'll be taught by experts in their field. So people that have a real passion for their courses. Majority of sort of lecturers and researchers will have written several books on the topics that they're teaching you. So they really are experts in the material that we're teaching you guys. And also you will be surrounded with like-minded individuals. So I did a business related course. I'll be with 200 other people that were also into the same subjects as me. So it creates a really good learning environment. And yeah, so good opportunity to mingle and mix with people that are, studying a similar thing to yourself and have similar interests.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, going along with your point there, Henrik, and it leads into what we're going to talk about in just a second. Actually, you mentioned obviously, Nikila, you studied a very specific kind of course. Do you want to kind of just explore that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. So as Henrik mentioned, I studied a degree in optics. So my intention was to graduate from university, pass my pre-reg period, and then qualify within that field. And that was my intention. And I kind of had that plan from about the age of like 16, 17. And I thought that's what I wanted to do. Obviously, as you can see, that's not what I'm doing now. And the reason being is that I graduated, started the job, worked in the field for a little while once I'd graduated, and realised it wasn't actually for me anymore. And the great thing was that because I had a degree and I developed loads of transferable skills, I'd worked in a variety of different areas and was able to interview okay, I was able to obviously move into this position, and it wasn't a hindrance. So what I'm trying to say is that if you kind of do have an idea of what you want to do, that's great. You can go to university, study that degree, but because you have a degree, just don't feel as though you're kind of trapped within that field, because obviously sometimes you are quite young when you're making these decisions, and that was the case for me. Certainly I thought I knew what I wanted to do, but once I was in the working field and I'd done it for a little while, I realized I just didn't have that passion for it anymore, and I needed to move on to something different. By having a degree, I was able to be hired in a variety of different fields, and it gave me a lot more options. Whereas if I hadn't have done that degree, say for instance I'd done an apprenticeship to get into optics, because there are pathways to do that type of thing, I would have really struggled to kind of find different employment that would kind of give me the challenges that I find in my job now. So definitely don't worry if you don't know what you want to do. You can still do any type of degree, and employers more and more are looking for a variety of people within their workforce. They don't want people within the teams who have studied the same degree. I mean, look at all of us now. We couldn't have studied more different degrees if we tried between the three of us alone, and we all work within the same team, within the same department. So it just goes to show that regardless, if you know what you want to do, great, go down that pathway. If you don't know, just do something that you're passionate about, and when you graduate, you'll kind of find your way anyway and where you're meant to be.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's brilliant. I think that again that leads on quite nicely from what Henrik was saying. So thank you very much both for touching on that into what I'm going to talk about in just a second. But also we are going to talk a little bit more broadly about sort of courses and stuff when we get to research in a few minutes. So stick with us if you are interested in finding out a little bit more about the kind of research methodology about finding out different courses and that sort of thing. So we're going to explore that in a little bit. But really, I was just going to touch on employability, because again, I think off the back of what you were saying, Nikila, there's a lot to consider when it comes to obviously going to university and what you're going to get out of it. As Henrik rightly said there, obviously there's a lot of different courses that is available to you, which we're going to talk about later. You're obviously going through and developing lots of skills and learning about that field that you're in by going to that course, by studying on that course and going to the different sessions. But ultimately, employability is very much a key theme of being a university student. What we're trying to do is we're trying to kind of pitch you up to be as employable as possible. What we're not trying to do is just get you there, you get a bit of paper at the end, kick you out the door, and you're in the big wide world. We're trying to give you those skills that are going to get you into a position where you can go, right, okay, I can do this, this, and this. Whether that be something very specific, like the skills that Nikila would have learned through optics, where you very much learned how to be an optician and you were able to go into that sort of into that kind of industry, or you're learning other wider transferable skills by being just a university student that can take you into other areas. Nikila's right. We studied three very, very different courses. Nikila with optics, Henrik with a business course. It was HR, wasn't it, Henrik?
Yeah, HR management.
Yeah, and then I studied a forensic computing course. So it was very much that kind of position where you go in, you're learning lots of different skills, and you're on modules that will take you into lots of different directions that will allow you to span lots of different things and learn lots of different things to, again, like I say, tee you up to go, yeah, I'm employable and I'm ready to be employed and I can go and do whatever it is I want to do at that stage. So I think that's very important, and that's very much embedded into the university study and into the sort of university culture. As well as that, obviously, your degree, generally speaking, a degree is internationally recognised by a lot of employers, so you could find yourself working anywhere in the world thanks to that degree. And then, of course, the university will very often offer you internships, placements, sometimes they're called sandwich courses. And essentially what that means is you study year one, you study in year two, you do a placement for year three, and then you come back and do your essentially third year of study, but your fourth and final year. And that is a brilliant opportunity to, again, take some of the skills that you would have learned in a classroom out there into the real world. And there are careers teams, particularly at DMU, we can obviously speak from experience here. At DMU, there are careers teams that will help you sort of find those placements. They'll help you write a CV. They'll help you get in a really good position to actually get onto one of those placement opportunities. So thinking about all of those things and thinking about those wider opportunities, again, there's a huge benefit to going to university because you get this sort of careers assistant, and you get yourself kind of teed up to get into a placement excuse me, and you can find yourself actually working somewhere as actually part of your studies. So you're again able to develop those skills. So there's a lot to think about with the academic side and the employability side, which is why we want to touch on it here. And I was quite fortunate. I actually only did a short placement. I did a 3-month placement while I was at university. And again, it was really good because I got to go and sort of work in a different city. I went to work in Newcastle. Most of the time I was on a timber yard, but I wasn't doing anything with wood. I was just setting up their IT systems. But it was a brilliant opportunity to go away and kind of do that because you learn so much sort of on the job experience as well as just generally learning the sort of theory in the classroom. So employability is very, very important for university and why it's so embedded within the course. So that's that out. We've done academic, we've done employability. Let's talk a little bit about the sort of social aspect. And it's another reason why a lot of people go to university. And I think it is as important going to university, the sort of social aspect. So Nikila, do you want to chat through that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. And I definitely agree with Ben there. I think for me, it definitely wasn't at the forefront of my mind when I attended university when I was thinking of applying. It wasn't really something that went into my decision-making process, but I definitely do feel that inadvertently I did gain a lot from the social experiences that I had at university. For instance, there were freshers events. There you often make friends for life when you attend university. It sounds kind of cliche, and a lot of people do say it, but it is very true that a lot of people do make friends for life at university. And often when you're in college and when you're in school and that type of thing, you kind of meet people just because they live near you. But when you go to university, you interact with people that have similar interests to you on your course, and perhaps you might be involved in things like societies. I know Henrik was involved in a society as he played a sport when he was at university. And he's probably made a lot of friends there that he's got a lot in common with regards to that sport as well. And it's a common occurrence. I know Ben has a lot of friends from the society that he was a part of. It's really, really common that a lot of people do kind of expand upon their network of people that they're friends with at university. And it's part of the experience. And I do think university is a package. It is about the employability. It is about the academia. But the social side is just as important. And it really does make you a different person to when you started. I was, it's probably quite hard to believe now, I was quite shy when I first went to university. I wasn't as chatty as I am now, and I know the team are laughing now because they know that's not the case, but you do kind of become a different person by having to interact with people that you genuinely know nothing about, whereas when you're in school and when you're in college, you've typically grown up with a lot of these people. So it is definitely worthwhile kind of being in a different type of environment, and it pushes you outside your comfort zone and forces you to kind of get along with all different types of people, and you'll make friends with international students who you might never have even come across in daily life. And it's just a really great way to kind of become a bit more social and sort of build relationships with all different types of people. There's also events that you can get involved in and teams and things. So as I mentioned, obviously there's various societies and sports teams that you can join. They will be hundreds of teams at every university. We have so many different societies you can get involved in, endless opportunities. And even if you don't find something that's quite right for you, you can make your own society, and that's completely fine to do. So do just bear that in mind. If you have quite a niche interest, there'll always be other people that kind of think the same and have that kind of interest as well. At DMU, something that we offer that's quite unique is called DMU Global, which is an opportunity to have international experiences. Now, that might be through a trip. So you might go and explore a different part of the country within a group, or you might volunteer your time, or you might even work abroad for a period. I know a lot of students do tend to take that option, and it's a great way to kind of expand upon your network, and it gives you an international experience that you can talk about when it comes to interviewing. So when you graduate, if they have, for instance, two applicants who academically look the same, on paper their CVs look pretty similar, if you have an international experience, something that you can talk about that sets you aside from other applicants, it kind of gives you that little bit of an edge, something that you can speak about that's quite unique and memorable. And that's definitely something that we recommend that you get involved in, because statistically it has been proven that those that have international experiences during their university studies are more likely to be hired when they graduate, probably because it gives them a lot more to talk about in an interview setting, and also just shapes their university experience and makes them a bit more well-rounded person. we have something called DMU Local, whereby students can get involved in volunteer projects, and we have DMU Square Mile India, whereby in a certain area of India, students can go abroad and they can live in India for a period of time and kind of volunteer their time and services and sort of give back to the community there as well. So I definitely think it's worthwhile getting involved in these types of things. And as I say, you'll make friends on these trips as well that perhaps you wouldn't have had an opportunity to interact with. All of these types of things are just going to shape your university journey in a way that you might have not considered, but definitely worthwhile getting involved in.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, thank you very much, Nikila. Again, like I say, the social side in some ways is just as important, and I think again you mentioning obviously about those extra skills and experiences that you get from being part of a society. Again, I know that Henrik, you were sort of chair of the rugby team, for instance, so you had quite a lot of sort of organisation and involvement in things like that, and that coming from a social experience into some skills that you've been able to take into the real world just again highlights how much university can offer you in that regard. So yeah, social is another really big part of why you should consider higher education, why you should consider choosing university, because it does give you those extra opportunities. What we're going to do now is move into talking about some research tips. So we're going to go through a couple of different facets of research and things you should look out for when you are researching your university options. If we've been able to sell you on the idea of university, this is going to be a good point to take some notes and just think about the things that you're going to explore as you move forward and as you consider your university options. As always, if you've got any questions about anything that we're talking about or anything at all about higher education, pop in the comments. We'll do our best to answer as we go. Henrik, over to you to kick us off with some research tips.
Yeah, so research in general is going to be, arguably the most important part of the process leading up to you actually going to university. Depending on what year you're in right now, whether you're year 12 or 13, if you're in year 12, you could probably start your research right now, because by the time you come back in September and Ucas opens, you only actually have a few months. So you have, the deadline's January to actually send off a Ucas application, and that time's going to fly by. You're going to be busy catching up with some of the work that you might have missed due to the pandemic and, coursework and general life and stuff like that. The time does fly, we've all been there. So do the research early, have a look, assess all your options, and then, come actual, sending off your application, hopefully you've made the right decisions and something you're happy with. The key things to just take away from this really are that, the research is going to be very independent. It's very much catered to your needs and what you're after. What your personal interests are. They're going to differ from person to person. There is no real right or wrong thing to look for when it comes to deciding which university you want to go to or which course you want to study. Maybe you are somebody that's quite, you're quite heavily looking at the league tables. Maybe you're somebody that, as Ben and Nikila both said, they maybe want a little bit of a mixture of both. You want to have a bit of fun at university. You want a good social life. Maybe you want to go to a large city that's quite busy, so you can get involved with quite a lot of that stuff. Maybe you're somebody that wants to join a certain society or a sports team. That's something I definitely look for. When I was at university, I don't know if you can see, but up there I've got a foam Leicester Tigers rubber hand, and Ben mentioned chairman of rugby club. Going to a university that played rugby was a big thing for me, and DMU play their varsities at Walford Road, which is the home of Leicester Tigers. So being able to actually play rugby there, 3 times over my course of my 3 years when I studied there, was a massive part of my university experience. But it's something I never really considered ahead of time. It was something that just sort of happened when I was at uni. These are things you can actually look at ahead of time when you're doing your research. So you definitely want to decide what your requirements are. Obviously, you want to look somewhere that is quite, how would you put it into words? You want to look somewhere that's, that match the grades that you're expected to have. It's always good to sort of shoot for somewhere that's a little bit more academic, but be realistic with the sort of grades that you're expecting, just so that when it comes to applying, potentially you don't come back with a few rejections when it comes to your offers and that kind of thing. But look at university websites. You can look at prospectuses, that kind of stuff. You can look at the Ucas website. There's tons and tons of information there, and obviously Nikila and Ben will both touch on things like the course and stuff like that. But it's worth bearing in mind that no 2 courses are the same. So that's definitely something you want to consider. And yeah, when things hopefully go back to normal very soon, definitely look to attend workshops and taster days, come to open days, have a chat with course academics, chat with current students and ambassadors and that kind of stuff. Have a look at forums and all that good stuff. And that should help you just sort of narrow down and sort of decide really what's going to sway you one way or another. But definitely look at what's important to yourself, and don't apply where your friends are applying to, for instance, because that's not the reason to go to uni. You want to go to uni for the reasons that are important to you, and to study the course that is hopefully going to get you to where you want to be in your life. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I think that's a really good kicking off point with university. Is just pick somewhere that's personal to you. Tick the boxes that you need it to tick. And I think that's a great jumping off point. We're going to talk about open days in just a sec, but the other piece just to add on to that is check the Ucas website. If you are not sure where it is you want to go, if you're not sure even what course it is you want to do, Ucas, you can just do a quick Google for Ucas. They'll take you to the Ucas website, and there is a search tool on there that will search for courses across the UK and possibly even slightly beyond. And you'll be able to find courses that link with your interests. So if you type in something in that box, it will come back with courses that are relevant to what you want to study and where they are offered in the UK. So if you're not even sure which universities offer what courses, that's a really, really good place to start. Obviously, if you type in something like business or law, you will find that there are quite a lot of universities in that list that might come up. So it's all about, as Henrik just said there, filtering down from that list. But if you're not even sure where to start from that point, Ucas website is a really good place to start there. Touching on something Henrik just talked about there, open days. Now, of course, obviously over the last, it feels like several years. It has only really been just over 12 months. We've obviously had to move very much to working from home, and we've all had to kind of do things digitally. So we haven't ran a sort of physical open day in quite a while. We are hoping that our July open day will be physical, but that is very much TBC, based on obviously where things go over the next few months. But ultimately, open days, whether they are physical or digital, are just really good opportunities to find out more about what the university has to offer. You can find out so much from looking on the website. You can find out so much from, looking at videos, but actually being able to sort of talk one-on-one or with a group of students, being able to have a chat with some of the academics, to hear some of the teachers, the people that lead those courses, actually explain what you'll be doing on those courses and what they're kind of involved in. I think it's a really good way of actually being able to find out more about the course and just get a better idea about what that university offers. Excuse me, I'm obviously talking too fast today. So going to open days is brilliant because it allows you to kind of explore those options a little bit more, and it's highly recommended that you do that as best you can. So when you are looking at those options and when you are considering what your options are for your Ucas application, go through some of these open days, and again, be that physical or digital, and just see if you can find out as much as you can about what that university offers to make sure it is ticking some of those boxes, as Henrik mentioned a few minutes ago. Are you looking at a particular course, which we're going to come on to a little bit more detail in a second? Is that course got certain requirements that you need from it to get you where you need to be? Does it have a particular sports team? What is the accommodation like? Again, something we're going to talk about in just a second. There's certain things that you are going to consider. And using an open day is going to be the best way to just find out more about that. And if you can go to 5 or 6 different open days, maybe even a few more than that, so you're able to narrow down your decision, it's going to make you way more informed when it comes to that final decision of where is it you're going to go. And the worst thing is you don't want to be in a position where you've made this final decision, you know which university you want to go to, but you don't even know what it looks like. You don't even know what it has to offer. So use open days as best as you can. And I guess in some ways, the benefit of them going digital, if they do remain to be digital for the next few months, is that actually you can very, very easily explore that university from the comfort of your own home. You haven't got to drive miles down the road or sit on the M6 for several hours to be actually able to find out about those universities. So take advantage of what you can at the minute and use this little bit of extra time and use these digital platforms just to find out a little bit more about the university and make sure they fit all of the boxes that you want them to. So that's just a little thing on open days. And again, there's a lot that you can sort of glean from those. And again, those opportunities to interact with academics and some current students can be absolutely rewarding in terms of you making those final decisions. So that's what we wanted to just cover on that. Now, I mentioned course, and this is going to be, again, a particularly important part of that research and is something you're going to need to drill into just that little bit, just so that you know exactly what that course entails. Nicola, do you want to take us through that?
Yeah, of course. And this is kind of to follow on from what Henrik said earlier about how different courses do vary. Obviously, when you're in college, if you're studying A-levels or a BTEC, there will be a set curriculum for you to follow. So there are set learning points, you have to follow them, regardless of which school you go to. They might have different facilities, but at the end of the day, the curriculum is the curriculum. The unique thing about university is that courses massively vary depending on which institution you study with. So for instance, if you're studying a history degree at one university versus another, it would look completely different. You might study modern history in one, classical in another. I don't even know that much about history, so I'm probably not completely butchering that subject, but you get my point. The point is that massively the content will vary. So the best thing you can really do is have a look on the university's website. Make sure that the content is relevant to what's interesting for you, because the worst thing you could do is turn up on the first day and they're talking about the world wars, and that's the very last thing you want to be learning about. So definitely do your research, have a look at the university websites. Course content is definitely found on most websites. They'll even list how you're going to be taught in terms of the different teaching methods. So it might be that you have lectures, tutorials, seminars, you might have practical sessions depending on the course that you study. So definitely do your research and just make sure that everything that the university offers you in terms of the course content and the way it's delivered matches up with your learning style and your interests. So that's definitely something that I had to do. So for me, the entry criteria didn't vary at all from the different universities that offered my course, and the course itself wasn't offered at many universities. So the main way that I had to make my decision was looking at the campus, looking at facilities, and looking at the teaching methods. So for me, there was a lot of practical elements to my degree, and it was really important for me that I got that practical exposure really early on so that I could kind of hone my skills and really refine them towards the end of my degree. So for me, I chose a university that gave me that contact time really early on. So I know that's very niche, but if you kind of use that methodology with your research and just make sure that you're making the right choices, then you'll definitely be fine. As long as you've done that research, you'll make the right choices that you need to choose. And also, just to touch upon this as well, what might be right for one person might be completely wrong for another person. So you might be speaking to a friend who's looking to study a similar degree to you, and you might think, actually, I really struggle with exams. They're very stressful for me. I don't perform well under stress. Something that can offer me coursework, I'm better at essay writing, would be far better for me. But your friend might completely disagree and say, actually, no, exams work better for me. I perform better under stress. So definitely do your research. Have a think about your own personality, what really suits you best, how do you perform well, and what's going to motivate you. Because obviously 3 years, it flies whilst you're there, but it does seem like a very long time at the same time. So definitely do your research. Make sure it's something you're going to be passionate about and happy about for the full 3 years, and potentially longer if you do decide to go on to further study. So definitely do your research and look at things like the entry criteria. So obviously that will often vary greatly between different institutions. So make sure, as Henrik said, you do obviously want to be a little bit ambitious and perhaps put down one that's an ambitious one, but kind of do be realistic in terms of what grade you're likely to achieve, because as we say, you don't want to kind of get to the position where you've been a bit too ambitious with your entry criteria in terms of refining insurance choices, and then it gets the results today and unfortunately it doesn't quite go to plan, as often unfortunately it does, and you've kind of sort of put yourself in that difficult position where automatically your application goes to clearing, and you could have perhaps been made offers at other universities that you could have had a bit more time to research and visit and that type of thing, but perhaps you've not had the opportunity to do so because you've not quite met the criteria. So definitely do look into these types of things. And as we say, open days are a great way to find information, but if you're kind of starting off at the early stages, if you are in year 12 and you're sort of thinking, okay, I do want to start getting a bit ahead of the game with the research, have a look on universities' websites, request some prospectuses, and kind of get that research in early, because it's never too early to start, and you can never have enough information when you're making these all important decisions.
Yeah, I think that's again a brilliant summary there. Again, good example of something like history. I have to be honest, modern history is not something I'm interested in, but ancient history is. So that would be something that I would look into if I was looking at courses. So yeah, it's definitely important that you consider your modules and all that kind of good stuff. So yeah, going back to the sort of open day point, use those to your advantage. But of course, they are also listed on Ucas and on the university's website. So you can spend that time, you can look into all those different things. So the next thing that we want to touch on, and it's something I mentioned, is something else that you can sort of explore during the open days. And again, you can do these digitally to some capacity, is accommodation. So if you are thinking of going somewhere that's a bit further afield, if you're thinking of moving out, getting that independence, you're going to likely stay in university halls. So Henrik, as somebody that I think stayed in university halls during your time at university, tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so accommodation will make up a massive part of your experience at university. First thing to consider is whether you are going to move away or stay at home. As Ben just mentioned, if you are moving a little bit further away, you probably are going to move out just because it's going to make life a lot easier, and it's going to save on commuting and all that kind of stuff. For me personally, when I actually studied at DMU, I am Leicester local as well, and I still stayed in accommodation even when I was at DMU. My parents' house is only probably like 15-20 minutes away from the university, but I just wanted that whole sort of university experience and a lot of the social aspect that goes along with moving into accommodation. It's a really great experience. Typically, especially in your first year, you get put with completely random people that you don't ever, you've not met them before. And then as you move through maybe your second and your third year, people then do tend to live in private housing with their friends, and that's what I did. But yeah, so it's a really good way to meet new people. It's really sociable, and it is a massive part of the university experience for a lot of people. Just the things to consider will obviously be whether you want to stay in private accommodation or university halls. So I stayed in university halls in my first year. So that's actually owned by the university. Now, the good thing with that is, especially at DMU, it's a company called Sulets. I think they're like a subsidiary of the university that sort out all the accommodation. I think there's around 10 different accommodation blocks that are owned by Sulets and owned by DMU that students can stay in. And the good thing with that is the you're not going to get ripped off by any dodgy landlords or anything like that. So that if you do have any issues, nothing's going to change. They're not going to suddenly put your price up, that kind of thing. You'll probably get your deposit back. That's the good thing with obviously going with your university provider. And then obviously when you move in, maybe your second and third year, and you go into private housing, it does just tend to be maybe a little bit cheaper, but then you do pay the risk of things like your deposit. So we never got a deposit back, and we're not really sure why, but it's just the case of what some landlords are like. So yeah, definitely something to consider. And then you also want to consider sort of what you're looking for in your accommodation. So I didn't want anything too fancy personally, but I was quite happy to get mixed sex accommodation, just so, same again, it's a little bit more sociable, but you can choose whether to stay mixed sex, single sex, and there's tons and tons of different room options. So you can have, if you're someone that's really fancy and you like your own personal space, you can get studio flats, which will come with maybe their own little kitchen area, their own little dining area, and your own bathroom built in. Some flats might have a shared communal area, so like a shared dining area, shared kitchen, but you'll have your own ensuite bathroom, which is nice. That's what I had. So that's same again. I went for the more sort of sociable option. You got to chat and hang out with your friends and stuff like that while you're cooking dinner and stuff like that. But then you've also got your own ensuite and that kind of stuff. Or if you want to go super basic, super cheap, you can go shared accommodation. You can go shared kitchen space, shared social space. You can even share bathrooms, that kind of stuff. And that's going to keep the price down on your weekly rent. So it really does depend on what you're after. If you want something that's a little bit more fancy, like a studio flat, you will pay a little bit more. And obviously then if you want something in the middle, the price will differ on a scale. But yeah, definitely something to consider. What I would say is, though, definitely the tricky thing, obviously, with the pandemic is that you might potentially not be able to see your accommodation if you are to go and get accommodation. And what we would always suggest is definitely look at your accommodation before agreeing anything. You want to make sure it's somewhere you're going to be comfortable living, because it's potentially going to be living there for at least a year. So definitely take advantage of the digital open days, which do have accommodation tours. So you can look at the accommodation, just make sure it's something that looks like it's going to suit your needs. And obviously then if things do open up, as Ben said, hopefully in sort of June, July time, when fingers crossed, sort of face-to-face open days resume, if you can come and have a look at things like accommodation in person, great opportunity just to see if it's somewhere you're going to enjoy living and it's something that sort of caters to your needs, really.
Yeah, definitely. I was just going to say that, actually. I don't think I mentioned it before, but there are normally tours of the accommodation buildings, which is really handy, so that you are, as you say, able to kind of see what it looks like. And the nice thing is about our sort of booking process, when you do go to actually booking your accommodation in months to come, when you've actually decided where you're going to go, this will differ from university to university, but we a booking system that we have actually allows you to pick which room that you want to stay in. So if you've got somebody else that you're sort of friends with that's going to the same university, it might be that you want to stay in the same building, it might be that you want to stay in the same block, and you'll actually have the option to actually pick rooms sort of in the same sort of area, so you can actually share that. So it's quite a nice system that we have in terms of booking those spaces for halls. But as Henrik's rightly said, there's loads of options from student housing to other options around the city. So it's worth just having a look, using the open days to find out a little bit more. We're quite fortunate that all of our accommodation again is very, very close by. It's literally like a 10-minute walk. Henrik, your parents lived sort of like 15 minutes away from the city, but then your accommodation was like 2 minutes away from your lecture, I suspect.
Yeah, I mean, I probably should have. I could have stayed and I could have saved money, but I don't have any regrets. I got the sort of social thing, and that was something that was important to me. Obviously, if you want to save a little bit of money, then if you are potentially going to say come to DMU and you live in Leicester, then you have the opportunity as well. Maybe you've got a sofa from a friend that you can sort of crash on or something if you go on a night out or a social or something. But consider all your sort of options, really, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a lot of benefits to staying to accommodation, from the social and from the independence that you get. But then, like I say, if you've got the option to commute, that might be something to consider. But it is, again, all down to that personal preference.
Can I just say as well, Ben? Sorry, just on that point as well, something that I probably should have mentioned before. If you are thinking of moving out as well, you get a lot of skills with that. Things like teaching yourself how to cook, unless you're going to be someone that orders a takeaway every night. But if you can teach yourself how to cook and just prep really easy basic meals, do your own laundry, get yourself up in the morning for your 9 a.m. lecture, budget your money, that kind of stuff. These are skills that you might think right now don't sound all that important, but a little bit later on in life, they're skills that you're going to need, especially if you live on your own, or when you move out of home for good, and that kind of thing. So these are a lot of skills that you will get through potentially moving out and living on your own. It might be the first time you've moved away from your family or your parents for an extended period of time. So you will get some independence with that. You might mature a little bit. They're just some of the things that sort of potentially go along with, potentially moving out that you might have not considered ahead of time. Yeah,
definitely. I think that's a good way of wrapping up the sort of accommodation part of the talk, because we, again, obviously, as you say, find out more about the accommodation by going to the open days and sort of exploring some of the website stuff. And again, as things open up, hopefully you'll be able to see more about the spaces. But as Henrik's just said, it's a great way not only just to kind of get yourself at that university and embed yourself in the community, but you do learn a lot by being there. Which is brilliant. I'm going to very quickly just touch on a couple of questions that we've had come in. So we've had a couple of questions from Farhad. Apologies if I said your name wrong there. That's just said open day will be in July, but we have to choose university by June. So I'm going to just make a quick assumption here. Do correct me in the comments. Are you likely to be starting with us in October? If that is the case, then yes, unfortunately, you will have to start firming up your offers, possibly before the open day. So in terms of that, guys, what kind of advice would you give here to somebody that was maybe looking to start with us this year but might just miss the ball with the open day?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, unfortunately, you have missed the open days that we have had. I know we've had them pretty much every month up until very recently. So I'm really sorry that you have missed the opportunity to visit an open day. Obviously, it is something that we wish we could offer you. I know in the future, if we are able to, COVID pending, we will be offering things such as campus tours, which might be something that we'll be advertising on the website in due course. So do keep an eye out on that. Within that, you'll get to tour specific parts of the campus, obviously within a COVID-safe environment. So it will be social distancing measures, etc., in place. But if you would like to speak with perhaps an existing DMU student or somebody that perhaps studies a similar course to you, we do have UniBuddy, which you can use to get in touch with staff and students on a variety of different courses. So do have a look out for that. We'll pop in links at the end of the stream, so do have a look on there. But yeah, that would be my advice really in terms of at this point what we can really offer you. Does anybody else have anything they want to add?
I'd just say just take your time, really, just deciding what same we've mentioned throughout this whole sort of stream, really just sort of weigh up what's important to you. Don't rush into anything, and then sort of weigh it up, chat with your friends, chat with your family, decide what you think is most important to you, and get some other opinions involved if you want to, and just make that decision. I mean, if you want to look at things like campuses and society, sports teams, facilities, that kind of stuff, There's tons and tons of material on our YouTube channel where you can look at videos that have been recorded, and I'm sure that will be the same for lots of unis out there as well. It's just unfortunate, obviously, the nature of the sort of COVID world that we're living in at the moment, that everything is, pretty remote, where otherwise we just invite you to sort of come have a wander on campus and have a look around and stuff like that. But, like I said, fingers crossed, hopefully soon. But yeah, just spend a bit of time deciding what's most important to you before you rush into any decision, because obviously there is a time commitment of at least 3 years typically, and there is a financial commitment that goes along with that as well. So yeah, you just want to make sure you're doing what makes the most sense to you.
Yeah, and even if you do make the decision, and you do make that decision in sort of June, July, there's nothing stopping you from going to open days if they open up after you've made that decision, because and it's never a guarantee, something we'll always say, but you can look at adjusting your places and adjusting your UCAS options slightly after the fact anyway. We do offer things like Ucas, I say we offer, there is something called Ucas Extra and clearing, which will allow you to go, actually, I'm not happy with the decision I've made, so I'm going to look at what my options are now. And very often universities will have spaces open for certain courses later on in the fact, all the way up until kind of September time, just before the courses start. So if you do make a decision and you haven't been able to make as an informed decision as you would under normal circumstances, then you could potentially still make that decision using as much information as you can gather. And then if you think, oh, actually, I've really made a bit of an error here, then you can at least start to explore your options leading up until the start date in October. So it isn't the be all and end all, but I would definitely take Henrik's advice there and just try as much as you can to try and find as much information online as you can. And I have popped a link to the chat feature that we have on our website in the comments, so you'll be able to see that link that's just there if you do want to just find out more. It's just dmu.ac.uk/student chat, and you can chat with current students and some of the staff members such as ourselves. And then Farhad's other question will take us to the last topic that we want to cover in this live stream before we wrap up, which is, what is city life like in Leicester at DMU? Nikila, do you want to tell us a little bit about the city of Leicester?
Yeah, definitely. And I think for me, I would definitely say, and I don't know if you guys agree, Leicester has massively upped its game in the past couple of years. Like when I went to university, I started uni in 2015. There were obviously things to do. It was a very social place. The student life's great because there's two big universities in the city, which I think always helps. And there's a lot of bars and restaurants and nightclubs, and there's a lot to do. And we're very fortunate in that our university is located within a very short, I'd say 10-15 minute walk max to the city centre. So we're very fortunate in that you don't even need public transport. If you're socialising, you can pretty much just walk into town whenever you want to. But I definitely feel like in the past couple of years, there's been like a lot of development, particularly in the Leicester City Centre, in that St Martin's Square and that type of thing, and the lanes and that type of thing. There's so many nice restaurants and bars, and I definitely think it has massively improved. I mean, it was always very good anyway, but I definitely think it's quite a nice place to be these days, particularly on like a summer's day. Like last weekend, I was in the city centre, and there were so many nice restaurants and bars open, and places to go for coffee and cafes and that type of thing. It's a really nice place to be, and I think perhaps you appreciate it when you leave more. So I think when I left and I came back, I appreciated Leicester a little bit more. And I do think it is such a really nice place to be. And there's a lot of young people in the city, particularly during term time and that type of thing. So I do think it's a really nice place to be. And I know we're probably a bit biased, but I do think a lot of students do choose Leicester because it is such an affordable city for one, but it does still have great social aspects. There's a lot to do regardless of your interests, and it's a great location in terms of our university. So yeah, definitely do bear that in mind. I hope that answers your question, Fahad. Obviously, depending on what you're interested in, I'm sure there'll be something for everyone within Leicester because it is such a great city. But in terms of obviously options, obviously Henrik has shown that even though he did have the option to stay at home, he did choose to live on campus, and that's obviously great, and it worked out great for Henrik. But if you are someone that perhaps is a bit more of a home bird and you do want to stay at home, it is quite fortunate that we have great transport links as well. So there's obviously the train station, which can take you directly into Leicester City Centre, and it's probably only about a 10-15 minute walk from the campus itself. So if you are relying on public transport, we have great bus networks as well. So there's something for everyone really, and you pretty much, you've got a lot of options there if you do choose to stay at home and commute in, regardless from how far you come into us. And it is something that most students will consider. I think there's no right or wrong there, really. It really is based on your priorities. And I know a lot of students will perhaps, if they are from perhaps a bit more local to Leicester, some students do choose to perhaps live out in the first year just to kind of get that experience, get that social experience, make the friends, make the networks. And then if they do feel that they need to perhaps cut back a little bit and save a bit of money in their second and third years, some students will then choose to move back home, but they're still got that experience, have still had that time. So it's whatever really is right for you. There's no right or wrong answer. What might be right for one person will be completely wrong for another. So definitely do have a bit of a research and kind of see what's within your budget, what is right for you, and just kind of make the decision based on that, really. But yeah, do definitely look at whether you want to drive or rely on public transport. Obviously, often if you have a city-based campus, driving can be a bit of a nightmare in terms of parking. So do your research and just make sure that there's a right choice there for you. So yeah, I think that would be my advice, really, when you're choosing whether to live at home or come onto campus. There's no right or wrong. It's mainly to do with budgets and what would really suit your lifestyle.
Yeah, and I think location is another factor to that research, and is something that you will gain from. Hopefully, I say fingers crossed, we are able to kind of bring you onto campus in a more sort of physical sense, because you're actually able to see, you know, where is it located, what do the buildings look like, how close is it to accommodation or to the city centre. And very often advice I will give to people that visit our open days, you know, back when we could actually have people on campus, was, well, the city centre is 5-10 minutes that way, just go for a walk and just see how close it is. Because you get to see you know, what kind of is on offer, you know, how close we are to the shopping centre and how close we are to the cinema and all those restaurants and cafes you mentioned. So location is another part to that research checklist that I do think you should consider. So that was all really the kind of main points that we wanted to cover today on this live stream. So we are going to sort of wrap up in a couple of minutes. So if you do have any other questions, do pop them in now so we can try our best to answer them. But obviously we started off this live stream talking about the sort of academic benefits of going to university. Obviously that is very much implied, but we explored that a little bit more. Then we talked a little bit about sort of employability and sort of the skills you develop from being a student at university. And then we talked a bit about the social life and the social aspect and the great things that come from the social. It isn't all just about the partying. There's a lot that you can kind of gain from the experience, which is absolutely brilliant. And then obviously we kicked off with some research tips from Henrik. We talked a bit about open days. We talked a bit about the courses. Then we obviously talked a bit about accommodation. And then we've talked a little about sort of location and that sort of thing. So there's a lot to take away from this, and there's a lot to consider in terms of research. So we do hope that some of the things that we have talked about today have been useful in terms of what you should take away from today and what you should take away moving forward if you are looking at sort of researching your options and considering what you are going to do next. If you are in that position where you're not quite sure yet, again, the Ucas website is absolutely brilliant to start that research and start looking at some of those courses. And then obviously from there, you can start to decide which open days you're going to attend and, you know, which ones are you going to look at? Have you got a criteria for location? Have you got a criteria for accommodation? Are you looking for particular sports teams? That's when you can start to bring in some of those checklists and actually consider what it is going to make your university experience the best kind of for you. It isn't about what your parents want. It isn't about what your friends want. It is very much a personal experience. And I think it was something Henrik said earlier, you know, you've got to make sure it's ticking those boxes and it is a personal experience. So do take the time to do that research. As we've said, if you're actually thinking of starting university this year, and you're kind of maybe a little bit later to the game, you're only just coming into the idea of going to university, still take some of these things to mind. Obviously, as I said, we are doing an open day in July. How that is going to look is still, again, to be confirmed. So do just keep checking the website, and we will pop a link to the open days in the chat just there like that. I do hope there's no spelling errors because I didn't check it. Book onto one of our open days. We'll obviously update you as to whether it is online or whether it is going to be in a sort of physical capacity. And that's going to be your best way to kind of, if you are interested in DMU or any of our courses, the best way to kind of find out a little bit more about those. So we'll update you on that on the website. And as I say, there are going to be various updates on the website for things like bespoke tours. If you can't make it to that open day, we're going to start to run some tours onto campus so you can just see what it looks like. And then there is an opportunity for you to chat to myself, Henrik and Nicola, and any of our students, some of our students via the website using the chat function just there. So if you do want to find out more directly from some of our current students and find out more about the courses, again, that tool on our website is absolutely brilliant for just connecting and just finding out a bit more about what the courses entail, which again is going to make up a huge part of that research. I think that's everything. Henrik, Nicola, have I missed anything at all?
Nothing that I can think of.
I think so, no. Smashed
Excellent.
it.
Excellent. That is what I like to hear. And it's still light outside, so I can go and finish off some gardening. So thank you very much, everybody, for watching this evening. If you are sort of missed part of the stream, it will be available on YouTube after the fact, so you can sort of scroll back and watch it all the way through if should you so wish. But until the next live stream, we have got one next Tuesday for what happens post-application. So if you want to find out a bit more about that, tune in back on our website for this time next week. But until then, enjoy the rest of your evening. Have a lovely week. Stay safe, and we will see you at the next live stream. Take care, everyone.